Hello and welcome to the Artist Spotlight with myself, Simi Jackson, and my guest today, who's Daniel Keyes. He's a good friend of mine. I've known Daniel for, I'd say at least 8 years now, and I actually can't remember when I first met him, so that's going to be one of my first questions. But I've been lucky enough to spend several weeks of each year over those 8 years with Daniel, and I've even been lucky enough to sit next to him when he won the Portrait Society that time, so we'll talk about that too. So I'd like to welcome my guest, Daniel. There he is. Hello, Mr. Keyes. How are you?
I love that. I love that.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy to be doing this with you. I think it's great. I'm honored, and you're a dear friend, and it's been a good 8 years. It's an interesting time right now, but I'm so glad that we've made it this far.
I know. Do you know, I actually can't remember when we first met. Can you?
I can. Yes, I can.
Oh, no. Okay.
So I had heard about you for a couple of years because everybody, it seems, in the art world had met you at Portrait Society or wherever, and I hadn't been to any of those things. So we were in Scottsdale, and you know what? I had met your mom and your brother first.
Mm-hmm.
A year earlier more, and then you came out to the States, and so it was in Scottsdale, and your head was totally shaved, and I thought, and you were just as fun and outgoing as you always are, but I didn't know you. I thought, who is this? And I don't remember having any, I don't know if we had any like direct interactions because we were always in a big group. And so that was sort of the first experience, but I don't know when we actually like talked or anything like that. Like I don't have any of those memories.
The first disclaimer I want to make is that I actually shaved my hair off for charity, for anybody who's interested. I didn't just go through a phase of just shaving my hair off. I'd shaved it off for a charity.
I thought Britney Spears phase, you know, where you just went mad.
I actually think we bonded over sharing my wig.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You had a wig. That's right.
Okay.
Totally forgot about that.
Well, I'm going to move this swiftly onwards and say, since then we've gone through loads together.
I don't eat dog treats, by the way. I'm going to give Teddy one under the table so he stops biting me. Go ahead.
Oh, is Teddy biting you, is he?
Yes.
You know, the professionality of my interviews have just gone through the pan.
Oh.
No, okay, I want to say though, we've gone through loads of different things. We've been all over the States, it seems, together at different events and things. But one of my personal highlights was when we were sat on the same table and I was sat next to you when you won the Portrait Grand Draper Prize, right? Which,
yes.
For anybody who doesn't know that's the cream of the crop. That's what everybody enters. They get thousands of people enter each year, right? And this has been going on for, I don't know, Kathy Anderson would be able to tell us. But
it's been 22 years, I think, this year.
Right. So, you know,
Yeah.
and it's one of the most prestigious of all of the different events and awards that you can try and win in the States.
Right.
And you win a huge check, which, can you remember how much the check was?
Well, because it was the 20th year, it was $20,000.
You are so lucky.
Well, you know what's so funny is I was David Casson at our table? No,
that actually, I have to say, every year for the last 7 years that I've been there, I have been sat next to the winner at the Portrait Society. So I'm like, come on.
It was the next year we were at the table, and David and Shayna were sitting there, and I had elbowed David, like, because they were giving out they had raised the prize another $5,000. So that year it was going to be like $25,000. And so I nudged David, like, they owe us $5,000, you know, because they raised it. And he looked at me. He's like, Daniel, he said, they gave me like 10. I said, Okay. So they had raised it because of the 20th year,
Right.
which was incredible, and that whole experience was totally unexpected. I didn't think I had a chance in the world, and I was in shock, total shock. I can barely remember some of it because it was so bizarre for me. But whoever wants to win that should strategically make sure that they're seated at your table,
I'm with you.
because
Honestly, I agree. I sat next to Max Ginsberg. I've sat next to David. I sat next to Alex last year. Alex Manezia. I sat next to you. I sat next to Bryce Liston one year, and he won. I can't even remember. I'm sorry to say it, but the list's endless.
yeah. So
just tell us,
whatever it is, you've got it.
I know. I look at the draw, I guess. But tell us, what is it that it means to you to enter that kind of award, in the competition? Because it's tough competition. The standard is so high for something like that. The portraits that are coming out are just off the charts. And of course, there's going to be some that you see and you think, wow, that just hits a chord with me. But technically speaking, they are all technically excellent as well, So what does it mean to enter that kind of thing, and how do people get involved?
Well, for me, it was, I wish that I wish that I had more of a history with it, but I don't. But I heard everybody talking about it, and it was always just built up to be this amazing event, amazing conference, and of course, amazing art that's not just from the States, but people enter from other parts of the world as well. And so I think that I developed a respect for it by going to the conference and just seeing what all of these amazing people are creating, and people who are more devoted to portrait and figurative painting, and getting to kind of get a taste of that, because that's not really what the direction that I've gone in has been. But I will say it was totally, it's not, I don't want to diminish it and say that I won by accident, but I just was not expecting it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's maybe a good thing, that if you do enjoy painting, and especially if you do enjoy painting portraits and just people in general, then it's good to just push yourself and to enter those competitions. Don't put all your eggs in that basket, and don't determine your value based on whether you win or not, but do put yourself out there. I think that it's just a good experience whether you win or lose. It's good for an artist to stretch themselves, and that's what I feel I did, because I wasn't painting a lot of portraits, but I wanted to just expand my understanding and develop some skill in that genre. And so I was pushing myself to do more of those paintings. Mm-hmm. And sometimes a competition like that is what will be the drive. Otherwise I'll just sit around, or I'll paint what I like to paint all the time. And not that that's not a good thing, but it doesn't necessarily push you like this competition would. Mm-hmm. So I'm super glad that I did it, but it's totally unexpected.
So would you say at that point then there is an importance to entering competitions, even if you don't think you're going to win?
Yeah, and you have to keep I feel like you have to keep the right mindset. Mm-hmm. and understand the benefit to entering competitions, but not put your value, not determine your self-worth or your artistic worth on those competitions, for a number of reasons. One of which primarily is it's so difficult to judge a competition, because I've also been on that side. Right. And so it's terribly difficult to go through thousands of images and select what you think the best one is just from a little image on your computer, or even on a screen of some kind. And so a lot of good things get passed up by accident. And it doesn't mean that they're not fantastic paintings. But I think it's important because, like I said, it stretches you, it pushes you, it gets you creating, it gets you working, and it makes you it hopefully makes you do your best work. Like it pushes
Mhm.
you to determine, I'm going to do my very best. And
Right.
that's going to benefit you apart from the competition,
Right.
because people are going to see this work. You're going to put it on your social media. You're going to put it in a gallery. You're going to push yourself to be and do your very best. And so that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That's going to be a benefit.
It's worth doing then. So what would
Yeah.
you say then are like, okay, this is a hard one, but like your top 3 competitions that if nobody knew where to enter, so like a question we might get from this is, well, okay, but tell me some, which one should I enter? Because I don't paint portraits. So we've talked about
Right.
Portrait Society. So which other ones would you say are good to enter?
I think the Oil Painters of America,
Yeah.
OPA, they do a huge competition, and sometimes I think the prize money for that is even more
Yeah.
than like the Portrait Society has been. So that's a really prestigious one, and it's got a lot of coverage.
Well, our friend Susan Lyon won that, and she won a huge
Yeah.
prize with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can vouch for
Well,
that
and
one.
it's, even if you don't win the main prize, it's just well covered.
Mm-hmm.
Because people follow it. Of course, they have members,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure in the hundreds or the thousands, plus magazines
Yeah.
are all covering it. So it's got a lot of press. It's got a lot of camaraderie. And so I've been needing to enter that one, actually. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Everybody says, well, which year, Daniel? Because we won't bother.
Yeah.
Not kidding. Just joking. No, everybody boycott 2022.
Well, that's a good point, though. Like, don't be intimidated by that, because the year that I won the Portrait Society, some of my art heroes were part of that lineup. And so that's why I thought, I do not stand a chance. And so you just can't think that way. It's just, that's irrelevant. You take whatever you can get and you be grateful. And it benefits everyone when you put yourself out there. Like I said, when you're endeavoring to create your best work and then you put it out there, people get to see it, they get to relate to it. Some people might get to buy it, and then maybe it wins a prize, but you're getting involved, and I think that benefits everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So you've mentioned Oil Painters of America. Is that the main one that you'd say between those two, or is there any others? Were there any others when you were starting out that you'd say?
I haven't done that many, so I'm not totally familiar with a lot of them. I did do, there still is an online one through FASO, Fine Art Studio Online. I think they're still doing it. And it's a much lower prize, like cash prize, but it's still very highly covered as far as it gets a lot of attention. And so I used to enter those all the time, and I won all of those different prizes over the course of a few years. But they do like a monthly thing, and then once a year they do, out of the winners, they pick like a grand prize winner, I think.
Is that connected with Bold Brush?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've heard, I see that often, and I think Bold Brush is really well covered. I think Plein Air Salon also, that one's a good one for those who are going outdoors. And then I think the other thing, my tip, just to add to you, Dan, is look on Instagram, look on Facebook, see what's going on at the time, and see, and ask people. Ask somebody who you're taking a workshop with, ask your teachers, ask your friends, what are they entering? Because some of these competitions are like £10 or $15 to enter. They're not crazy expensive. But I agree with you, the worth of doing them.
Award, I mean, that one is huge.
Oh, yeah.
That's in your neck of the woods, but BP, anyone in the world can enter. And a lot of them from the States. My friend Felicia Forte, she got second place or third place, and even the first, second, and third, they're huge prizes, way bigger than anything that we have in the States.
Yeah.
And they get like major mainstream media coverage.
Yeah, well, the other thing with BP is that I know that they travel around galleries as well worldwide. So they go to Spain whilst they go to maybe London and Edinburgh, whilst they go over to the States. They travel with the exhibition, which is, it's huge. Yeah. I think it's such a good point you make that you've got to enter to see and not be put off by your peers, because where you would say some of your rock stars, people would see you as that. So, you know, not the phrase rock stars, that's probably the wrong phrase, but you know.
They can aim a lot higher, but sure.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, don't be put off. Don't be put off. Anyway, come on, let's remain professional. I'm going to ask you another question. So, the next question is about what you entered into the Portrait Society, which I'll put on our Instagram feed after we've aired this interview so that people can see the painting that I'm talking to specifically. Such a beautiful painting. Is it 2 or 3 children? I can't remember if one's a plant. Oh, okay. Maybe I thought it was like 2 children and a plant that could have been a third, but I couldn't remember. But it's such a beautiful painting. I absolutely love it. And honestly, it says Daniel all over, because the flowers are in there too, and everything that's so special about you. But I think my question is then, when you'd mentioned that it's not your usual topic, not your usual subject, what is it then that is your usual subject, which we all know secretly, but why is that then the case? What is it that you favour over that?
Well, it stems from my childhood.
Did you mean to make that pun?
What?
Did you mean to
No.
Just check it.
No pun intended. And because of that, because I've analyzed it a bit just for my own understanding, I often ask this question of people now, whether they're in the art world or not: what did you love as a child? And does that relate to anything that you do today as an adult and as a professional? And because when you enjoyed something, I remember Richard Schmid bringing up this topic once, just because whatever you loved as a child was so genuinely loved, because there was no motivation behind it, like money or fame or popularity. None of that was a factor. You just were genuinely attracted to this thing or this, hobby or whatever it was. And so for me, even before art, it was flowers. My earliest memories are just being endlessly fascinated. I mean, I would have been happy to watch a plant grow, and as sad as that is, I mean, I read all of the books that I read, everything that I did, everything I thought about was just about growing flowers and gardening and just a genuine love for it. And so the reason I ask people that question today, and I ask them, is there any part of what you loved as a child included in what you do as a professional? Because it seems like that equals more happiness on the job, and the ones that are maybe doing something totally unrelated to those early interests are the least happy, it seems. And so for me, it's wonderful that paintings of flowers are so popular and they sell and people like them so much, but it's not for those reasons that I'm doing them. It's for my genuine appreciation of nature and the things that bloom. And so that's primarily what I enjoy painting the most. And that painting that won the Portrait Society has so much of that in there. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want just a portrait, because that doesn't interest me as much. I wanted something that reflected more of my interests.
So I was going to say, did you find that a struggle then to go to a topic that you're not as interested in or familiar with? How do you go across the genres there?
No, because I love, like, John Singer Sargent is my favorite artist, and he primarily painted people. And so I could stare at his paintings forever. So there is enough of an interest to want to paint people and want to paint, but not just, I don't want to just paint humans. I want to paint the human experience. And so that's why that painting was not really a portrait. And that's why I didn't think it was going to win. I wasn't going to enter it. I was going to enter a portrait painting. And the funny thing is I was trying to upload the painting on the site, because you enter online, and it was rejecting. It was glitching. it wouldn't accept my entries. And so I thought, well, I'll try this one, which was the painting of the two kids, and it
Really?
accepted it.
Wow, that's fate.
So
Or you need to
yeah,
get a new
right.
computer. That's great.
Yeah. But that painting it was not just about it wasn't about the children, it was sort of about childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I had so many people come up to me during that conference and tell me how it reminded them of their children, even if they didn't look at all, they didn't have to look like those children, but it reminded them of what it was like to be a child. It reminded them of what it was like to raise children, because it wasn't like a portrait of someone looking at you. It was like you looking on a scene, you looking on a moment or an experience. And so that appeals to me because that's how I feel when I paint flowers.
Yeah, beautiful. I know what you're describing because I've obviously seen the painting, but I know exactly how other people will have felt because I felt the same thing. Just absolutely beautiful. We touched just for a second there, and obviously I wanted to bring him into this because he's our favourite person living ever. Can you tell us, because I've heard this story a lot of times and it's one of my favourite stories, but can you tell us how you came to know of the great Richard Schmid, please?
Sure. How I discovered his work?
The whole thing. I want the whole shebang because I love it.
Dear.
It's one of my favourite stories.
Well, it's funny because when I was 15, for Christmas you get presents from your grandparents and your aunts and uncles and all that. And so my grandmother, the gift from my grandparents was a magazine subscription. And what 15-year-old wants a magazine subscription for Christmas? It was sort of like getting socks or something. But I did not say any of that. I was grateful. So the first issue of the Artist magazine, which is no longer in print. No, it is in print. It's the Artist magazine, yeah. But the first issue that came of that year-long subscription had one of Richard's paintings on the cover. And that was my first introduction to him or his work. And I remember going through that magazine. I still have it. I still have that issue. And I would go back to that article. I skipped everything else in it. And I would just go back to the article on his work over and over again. And so it just always stuck in my mind, even as a 15-year-old boy. It just so intrigued me, the way that he painted and how real it looked, but how loose it was done, and the texture and everything that you could get, even though it was just a printed image. So when I was older, I was sort of painting other things and just sort of fumbling around. And when I was challenged to get really serious, like if I was going to make this a career, I need to get really serious about this, and I need to find someone whose work I could study or I could just really analyze and develop some skill. I remembered what I saw as a 15-year-old, and I went back and found that issue again. And then he had written that book, Alla Prima. And so I went and I ordered that book and I just studied it. And I made that my school because I didn't go to any art school or anything like that. And so within about 3 years' time, I went from getting that book, studying it, to being on the cover of the Artist magazine. And then the Artist magazine was hosting what was called the Weekend with the Masters, an art conference where all of these great artists were going to come and demonstrate and all that. Well, Richard was going to be there. And so I bought myself a ticket and I decided to go. And so when I got to that event, what was so amazing is it was huge, and they had just wall-size banners and pamphlets and, all of the stuff that the conference would put together in a bag or as flyers or whatever. And they were using my painting that they had used on the cover of the magazine. So by the time I met Richard, he had already seen my work, and I got the opportunity to meet him and sit down with him, and he said some nice things, and he said if I was ever in his area that I should come paint. So I went home and I bought a plane ticket. And I called him and I said, hey, as it happens, I'm going to be in your area next month. And it was great. He was excited and I was thrilled. And he let me come to his studio and paint with him and his group and Nancy and all of the others. And it was, I know that it might sound cliche to say this, but it was literally a life-changing experience.
No, I can believe
and
it.
Just incredible, and I'm forever grateful for it. Because most of it wasn't like he was teaching, it was nothing like that. It was just painting together, and that's all we've ever done. But it was getting to be around other people who were like me. Because up until that time, I just was a little artist painting in my parents' garage. I didn't know that there was no sense of there being other people like me. It was like I found my own kind.
Right.
So meeting him and the others, all of them, it was so life-changing. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I mean, the Putney, when Dan says others, you mean the Putney painters, right?
Right.
I mean, they are such a, Kathy Anderson, who's a great friend of both of ours, as much as we hate to admit she is. She's our best friend. But the group of people there are just phenomenal, formidable painters. Stephanie Birdsall, who's also another great friend of ours. And then obviously you've got Charlie Hunter, who pops in from time to time there. I know Carol Arnold's over there. I'm going to forget some people if I list them all. But they're just really great group of painters. And obviously Nancy and Richard are like the leaders of the pack with Penelope. That place is special. I've been a couple of times. Richard painted my mum out there. Right. And then we flew out and he painted me as a surprise, which was just obviously amazing. And I don't know if I'm meant to say this or not, but I might say that we might have a feature in the new book that he's doing, but I'm not going to say anymore. But yeah, it's but that, do you know that Alla Prima book that you mentioned as well? Can you just tell people a little bit about that book? Because I obviously have a copy. I say to anybody who's oil painting, get yourself that book. Like, a lot of people don't know where to start, and that's like we've covered. You don't know where to start with competitions. Okay, you don't know where to start with good, reliable sources. And at the Alla Prima books, well, Alla Prima 1 and 2, go for it, Dan. Say to folks what it means, what Richard does in those books.
Well, all you need is Alla Prima 2. Alla Prima 1 is out of print, and sometimes that confuses people. I wish that he would have kind of titled it differently, because Alla Prima 1 is contained within Alla Prima 2. Right. It's just that it's expanded. But I always tell people, it's a $100 college education. It's like your entire university education for $100. Like, that's how valuable it is. Right. Because it contains everything. When he says all I know about painting, it's everything you need to know about painting, and not just getting started. It's what anyone should refer back to, whether it's his book or others, but especially his. It's what I go back to in order to develop skill. I think people are always looking for, the next big thing, or they're looking for the key, the secret that they don't have yet. And in any profession, gaining skill requires going back to what you already know. It requires going back to the basics. An athlete doesn't go and learn new technique. He or she goes back to the basics in order to move forward. And so it would be no different with art. And this ties in with the competition idea too, that the objective priority one for every artist should be to get better. It should be to develop more skill, because that's the foundation for any of it. winning a competition, making more sales, building whatever it is, whatever your goals are. In order to get there, you have to be your best. And so you have to go back to those basics, I think, to develop skill. And I can't think of a better way, if you paint representationally, than going to Alla Prima. Right. That book, it is so valuable. It just seems ridiculous that, it seems like words aren't enough to talk about it, because people, you can't translate how important this is and how much it's worth.
I know. Really. I'm so glad that I didn't mean to touch on the book, but I'm so glad we have, because I keep saying to Nancy and Richard, like, so many people in the UK don't know about this book, need to know about this book. And Nancy and I have talked about us selling the book on for them, purely to try and get, because the shipping, I know it can kill it. The shipping can kill anything. So that's something I want to say. Watch this space for anyone in the UK or Europe, because it's just as cheap to ship to Europe, that I'm going to do my best over this next 6 months or so, try and get a ton of these books over here, because you guys can get them quite easily and quite cheaply with shipping. But it's not as...
The thing is, and this is why I say it's worth a college education. If you had, like, for me personally, if I had opportunity to go to this university that costs, $50,000 a year or something. I don't know how much university costs because I didn't go. But if you had opportunity to do that, or just spend $100, $150 or whatever on this book, I would choose that book, because even if you do go study with someone or you get some kind of training later on, you will have the basics. You'll have more, and it's more than just the basics. You'll have the foundation that you can then always refer back to as you grow.
So
and it's just
amazing. Sorry to cut you short there. Can I ask you, have you ever done the colour charts?
Oh, yes.
And what do you think to them? Because I know certain people swear by them.
It's so funny, because I used to spend a lot more time with Richard. Like, at the time, I was going back and forth quite a bit, or we were together at different events, it seemed, throughout the year. And so I would sit there. I was always, with him or next to him or whatever, and I'd listen to him lecture other people, like, you should do the color charts, and he'd kind of look to me for reinforcement, like to verify, like, they shouldn't they? And I nod my head like a good little boy that I was, like, oh yes, they should do the color charts, and I hadn't done them.
Uh-oh.
And so, but I never admitted that to him, but no. I find you won't see this, right? No,
I'm gonna send it to Nancy though.
I finally did them, and I think it depends on what your expectation is going into it. I feel that everybody should do it, because the idea is to familiarize yourself with color. You're so dependent on being able to know what your palette is capable of doing, and so there should be no guessing. There should be no guesswork, because putting it on the canvas is hard enough. So you should know exactly what those pigments are capable of. And so by doing the color charts, you familiarize yourself with the characteristics of each one. It's not really like a recipe book or something that you just memorize, this plus this makes this. It's becoming intimately acquainted with each of them, so that there's no surprises, and you can count on them to do exactly what you need them to do. And so absolutely everybody should do them, whether you follow along with his book or you just go based on whatever colors you have or another method. That doesn't matter, but you should do that.
Do you know, sometimes you're so intelligent. That was so great. Okay, next question.
Well, it's everything I memorized that you told me to say.
I know, right? I'm so glad we did that 1.5-hour interview before the interview.
Right.
No, I want to touch on something that you taught me without you even knowing, talking about natural intelligence several years ago, and it stuck with me, and it's something that I carry on to this day to artists, my partner, to anybody who will listen to me, basically. And I say to them, one of the things Daniel Keyes taught me was never have all your eggs in one basket. As an artist or as somebody who's a creative, you have to have different channels of income, because financially you might be doing great on sales sales on paintings this month, that could plummet.
Right.
The gallery could drop you this, and then you've
Right.
got to have X, Y, Z. So can you
Right.
talk to us, because honestly, for us as a company, it's a similar thing. It's like us relying on one artist to say everybody use Rosemary brushes. You can't do that. You've got to hope that you help enough people that enough people will channel in, and
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about the different channels as a professional painter that you found useful and that you'd recommend people start to look to explore?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of basic business, and unfortunately, so many artists, because it's painting or creating is hard enough to do, and it just consumes you. And in order for it to work, you literally have to be obsessed with it, because you've got to be willing to wake up tomorrow and do it all over again, even if you failed the day before. So it requires obsession. But because of that, so many artists they're lacking in a business sense, and so business 101 is have more than one stream of revenue at a time, because if one starts to lag, you're not running around panicking, because you've got others to count on while you work on that one that might be lagging. And so for an artist, I mean, I'll tell you what I do, but I would hope that, or I'd encourage that an artist figure it out for themselves, in the sense that have your paintings, work on your paintings, get those to the price level that you want, because that's your ultimate goal. But try to come up with something affordable too. Think of something, maybe you have a certain standard. I'm not saying go make a bunch of coffee cups with your images on it, or something like that, or calendars. I don't know. Maybe you avoid those things, but think of something that is up to your standards, but is also going to have a much more wide-reaching market, that people can buy easily, they can afford it, or they can buy it without really thinking about their banking account, drying up, having to do it. So for me, there are several things. There's a market for art education. And so I've come up with videos, of course, and I've come up with a way to make them extremely affordable. So for so many years, a DVD is what everyone, would buy, and they cost an average of $100. So I wanted to figure out a way to make them super affordable, because a $10 market is way bigger than a $100 market.
Right.
And so I started making the videos myself, and then I made them as downloads, so that there's no physical product that I have to pay for or send out or anything like that. So I started charging $10, $15 for these downloads, and I make just as much or more on those than I would selling a $100 DVD. So that's one stream, of income.
Right.
Getting into that market, that's the art education. Then, of course, I have the paintings, that market. And I also have the teaching, like the workshops, which is also part of the art education. But it's a whole separate business, it's a whole separate market.
Right.
And it's so amazing to me. Some years that the workshop market makes just as much as selling paintings. And last year, I probably made as much on the downloads, the inexpensive downloads, as I did selling paintings or the teaching. So it's like if one dried up, I still have two more. I'd say try to get three.
Yeah.
And it could, for some people, maybe it's prints, if you want to try that, or I don't know, or come up with something, That's why I don't want to just say what I do. I want to encourage that there's something that you can do, and maybe it's a local market. Well, it's a local reach.
I think one of the things that has really taken off during this time is Zoom meetings, and so I'll tell you, on Wednesday evenings I do a yoga class online.
Oh.
Thank you. Very impressed with myself. But do you know what? It's every Wednesday, 4 sessions, £35 $40 type thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so nice because I roll in at 8:05, I roll out at 9:32, you know, and I'm straight into bed type thing. But it's a way that my teacher, who we could have seen, we can't see her anymore. And so Zoom is definitely one of them. And then I think another thing that people are doing is Patreon, which is I see that all over now. Andrew, who I interviewed last week, I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Tischler, great painter. Yeah, great painter down in New Zealand, and he does Patreon, and there's different tiers that you can do. It's a bit like Kickstarter or things like that, you know. So there are different channels and avenues. One of the things that I keep seeing pop up on your feed, though, is this USB card, which, by the way, looks very stylish. So that's, I can imagine, is already a hit. But what's the difference between like a USB then and then downloading stuff online? What's the difference there?
Well, the downloads are particularly appealing to people like in my age bracket or your age bracket. Some of the others are not as familiar maybe or comfortable working with computers, and so a download is, you know, they want a physical product. So when I made all of these videos, I wanted to eventually come up with some kind of a physical product. But DVDs are outdated. I don't even have a DVD player, so I'm sure a lot of people are just phasing out that. So it's a physical product. You still put it into your computer, and it just goes into whatever USB port that you have. But it's.
I have a question. Does that mean that anything that you could download is then on the USB, or have you got separate things on those?
No, they're separate things. Okay. There are some crossover, but I wanted the card to have some exclusive videos on it. So it has 12 videos, and that's the other thing that's great. It actually becomes more affordable because if each video or if each download is like $16 to $20, and you get 12 of them for $100 or whatever it is, you know, you're saving money. But then you also, I think a lot of people like it because it's that physical product.
Right.
And they can have always, you know, and they can plug it into any computer anywhere that they go. And so it's been a huge hit. I've sold out, and I have to order more to be produced, which people are asking for. So I need to get on that. But it's been really great. People have responded to it really well. And to touch on the business side of it real quickly too, along with the idea of having several streams, another really basic business principle is to be a problem solver. And the bigger the saying goes that the bigger the problem, the bigger the profit. Because when you solve a problem, there's always profit behind it. And so I think of like what Richard did with his book and the lack of that information in the universities at the time. That was a problem. Being able to get your hands on that information, getting your hands on that education was so difficult. So he solved that problem. Also, it's very, you know, that education is very expensive. So he solved two problems. And that book has been wildly successful. I mean, I won't tell you in dollars, but it's just unbelievable. It's gone all over the world. So there's profit behind the problem solving. So whether it's on a local level or a widespread level, you find a need, that something that's not being met, and then you solve that, and there's always, you know, it's good business. There's always profit behind it. You guys have done that with your brushes, because the lack of quality in so many other brushes, or the lack of certain, just you listening to artists' needs, you know, and working with them, that was lacking. And so it's brought so much success to your guys' business to answer those needs and meet, you know, solve those problems.
I really want to be sarcastic and say, but people like you we don't want to listen to. But I'm not going to say that. I'm going to remain very humble and grateful for such a kind sentiment and say, thank you, Daniel. But I want to ask you another question, which is, are you going to bring out a book? Ever?
Am I going to? Why would I try to come up with a book? They could just buy Alla Prima.
Well, you could do Alla Prima by Daniel.
Yeah. I think if I do a book, it would be, yes, I think eventually I want to put all my favorite paintings into like a coffee table type book with really good big images,
Right.
minimal text. And so eventually I do want to do that, but
Right.
I need to just do a few more paintings.
And I have one more question, which you touched on slightly, but that's prints and how they come about. And what's the decision there? Because you've been one of the artists I see who's reluctant to bring out prints. Not perhaps reluctant, but like from an outsider, you'd look at it and you'd go, okay, now I'm lucky I own a few little Daniel pieces, but not everybody can do that. And I know I'm very fortunate, and I had to beg, borrow, and steal. Probably did steal a couple of them off the easel. Bye. No, but you know, a lot of people can't do that, and so in which case the availability of a print, and some like I've seen, I feel like I've only seen one of your prints, and I don't know if you've ever done more, but I swear I've only just seen the one print. And what's the thought process behind that? How do you juggle that one?
I am reluctant only because I feel like maybe it was in the 80s or the 90s, before I was aware, but looking back, it seemed like the print market was really oversaturated, and people started to get just build up the prices of prints and make them into more of an investment than they really were. And so I shy away from that because I don't feel like a print is ever going to be extremely valuable, at least in a person's lifetime. So then that changes the perception. I think that I've done a few prints, but in order to meet that need that you're talking about, where not everyone can afford a painting.
Right.
So for me, if it's presented that way, that this is just to get some beautiful imagery into your home on a budget, it's that works for me.
Right.
So I'm very careful about it, but I think it's a wonderful market. Like I have a lot of Richard's prints, just that I've gathered over the years, and I love them.
Yeah.
There's nothing like original work, and so I never want to present it as it's just as good, or it's going to be worth so much money. No, it's really not. But it's just, if you like it and you want something nice to put on your walls, that means something to you, I think that serves a real purpose. And so I think people should do it, and especially, like I said, to get involved in maybe a smaller market locally, to your friends be able to buy a piece of yours and have your images that you're creating in their home. I think it's a wonderful wonderful thing. I just don't want people to think it is what it really isn't.
Just a real quickie on that one. I don't want to labour the point too much, but just, is it difficult to bring a print to fruition, colour matching wise and things, or okay?
It is. It's also an expensive process. So the thing is, like, my prints have not sold super well. Like, some have done okay. And I look at some of these other guys that are doing prints and they sell like 1,000 of them or something in a couple of hours. I honestly don't know how they're doing it. I don't distrust them that, they're doing them. But it definitely has not been that way for me. So I would say be cautious, because it can cost a lot of money. And so you want to really try to do it inexpensively. I would rather do it quality, but as inexpensively as I can. That way I can present it at an affordable price.
Right.
Yeah. But it can become another stream.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's I think kind of what I wanted to touch on, because I think a lot of people, especially through COVID, I mean, they're going to have struggled. Okay, let's leave COVID aside. Some people are just struggling full stop, that they don't know how they're going to get into this, or they've been into it for a long time and they still can't make money. So I think one of the things I want people to take from this whole interview is go and look up Daniel Keyes and go and look at the different avenues that are available out there and start to see how they could work for you. I wanted to ask you another one of them, which it's more like the side of galleries versus you selling it yourself. And I know this is a fairly contentious topic with a lot of painters because of the fees that you've got to pay galleries, but then also the work that the galleries do for you. I've seen quite a few of your one-man shows at the Legacy. I know it's called now the Western Artist, is it called in Scottsdale? I can't remember. I know have they changed the name? Or is it the magazine that changed the name?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
It's either that or the magazine has changed. One of them's changed the name. But anyway, but at the Legacy, I see you go in there. You're friends with all the owners. They respect you. You have this great relationship. How do you build that up with a gallery?
Well, like I said, always priority number one is work on your work. Get your work, the skill level up all the time. Because eventually you then have, the galleries will want to represent you.
Right.
And so I always tell artists starting out, don't have big goals, have big dreams, but don't skip over all of the little steps and just hope to get to, skip everything, go from A to Z. Mm-hmm. There's so many steps along the way. And there's so many local galleries, or there's smaller venues, or you've got your Instagram, you've got your social media. The world is just a different place now with the internet. So do what you can wherever you are right now.
Right.
I loved doing the local or regional art fairs when I first started. Loved it. You set up a booth. You sold your own work. You learned how to talk to people. You learn how to talk about your own work, which is huge for an artist because so many people don't know how to do that, or they don't feel comfortable doing it. So it teaches you all those lessons. And then your work is at a lower price point. So people who are never going to be able to afford a $10,000 painting, but they can afford a $900 painting, they get to have your work in their home. They get to live with original art. I was doing things like my local Whole Foods grocery store, they were part of an art hop circle. I did a little show there when I first started. And so I think it's nice to do those steps along the way. It's wonderful to be in the big galleries, and I'm grateful for it. But I'm also very grateful for having those other experiences because I learned so much from them.
I think one of the things that people don't know about you is that you paint with a local group of painters that live in your town, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell everybody a little bit about that, because it's something that I'm sure most people wouldn't expect. I think it's great.
Well, it's so important because painting, or so many of the creative processes, are an isolated profession. You're working alone, late hours or early morning, whatever, but alone and in your own head. And I have found as I've developed that I love painting with other people. I love being around them and socializing and then working together. We're all working on our own thing, but it's like you build off of other people's energy from it, and it's really wonderful. So I've always wanted to have a local group, and right now I have a wonderful group. We meet just about every Saturday, and it's so routine. It's so nice. Like, you just stroll in, we meet at the gallery that we all show at here locally, and we just bring our own things. It's like the Putney Painters used to be, or maybe it still is, but slightly different. But it's just so rich and rewarding, and you feel so good, and you develop this community, and it really helps me create more, I think. And so I feel that that's so important. Yeah. And everybody should, sometimes when I say stuff like that, people, I want to be part of your group, they'll want to be part of a group, a specific one. And so I highly suggest that you start one, that you really, I encourage you to develop your own group. Find some people in your area who you can paint with and get to know them and build off of their.
I also think, like, if you guys saw the group Daniel's painting with, you've got all ages, You've got all skill levels. You've not got 12 Daniel Keyses lined up. Like, you've got folks who are learning this and they're trying out that, but it's not about coming to you for a lesson. It's about, let's go in on a Saturday and you know, you do group shows. I love that. I love that.
You love our group. Oh my God.
I know I would.
We get together and we talk and we gossip and we laugh so much. Right. You would love it. So you have to.
I would. Do they all use our brushes? Do they even know about us?
They do. Yes, they do. We talk about your brushes all the time.
Okay, you guys need to change your topic. That shows how fun that group is. Right, no, I'm joking. Okay, well, talking about brushes, you've just made me slide right into there, because I can't do my job and still expect my mum to be impressed with anything remotely that I achieve in my life if I don't bring up paintbrushes. So what I want to do is quickly, you haven't seen this video yet, but we've been doing some fancy videos where we spin brushes around, like, so I'm going to show a quick video and then we're going to talk about brushes, Daniel. So bear with me 1 minute.
Cool.
Sorry about that. Okay, so everybody will have seen the video and seen the different brushes spinning around, and one of the brushes, well, firstly I want to just mention something, which is that Daniel Keys doesn't think he should have one set, he thinks he should have two. But I'm going to tell everybody a little secret here. When we first, you'll maybe remember it, when we first set up your brush set, I was like, right, okay. And you said, what needs to be in a brush set? I said, everything you use. And you were like, well, that's easy. And you grabbed all your brushes and you went, here, put a set together of these. And I'm like, no, Daniel, that's never going to sell. That's hundreds of dollars type thing. And you were like, yeah, but I need them all. So I was like, no, let's narrow it down. So we narrowed it down to the essential set. And then you said, do you remember what you said to me? You said, well, I want to have the most expensive brush set that Rosemary brushes offer. Do you remember that?
It sounds like something I would say.
Yes, no, you definitely said it. And I can tell you all, Daniel's brush set is about, well, it's got 68 brushes in it. I don't want to misquote anything here, but I think it's about 600 or 700 pounds. I'd have to have a look. It's expensive. Right. And we, just so you know, we sell one a year usually. When we sell one, everybody in the workshop kind of like rings a bell. Ding, 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 ding. We've sold one. You know? And it's like,
oh my God, that's
it's
hilarious.
The one set that the entire workshop, when we say we've sold it, everyone goes, oh no, I hope I haven't got to pickle the brushes for that set. This is a nightmare.
Oh.
But it is our biggest set, and it's also one of the only sets that we haven't managed to film yet because Joe, our video guy, hasn't figured out quite yet how he's going to spin them all around.
Has to get like a really wide angle.
Right. I said you're going to have to just break it up into sections of the set. But one of the brushes that you absolutely love, and I know it's something that for you, and don't let me put words in your mouth, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but for you it was something that you needed to replace the Mongoose was Mongoose. Right. And that's the Eclipse Extra Long Combers. So I want you to spend a couple of minutes or 10 seconds, whatever you like, but just tell us what it is about that brush, because folks can go on and look at them later, but tell us what it is that you like the feel of.
Yeah, I definitely, without a doubt, would not be able to do my work without them. I mean, it would totally change my paintings to not have those brushes, because One of the I'd say one of the complaints I have with most brushes is that they're almost too uniform.
Right.
And so I don't like the look of my painting if the brush is too perfect and it just applies. It's almost like it's too consistent, and I actually want a random looseness to my paintings so often. And so those brushes meet that need. That's that problem solving, that you guys so brilliantly did. What happened was the old mongoose brushes that we got from a different manufacturer for so many years, the part of the appeal to them was actually due to them being poorly made. They sort of would splay a little differently. They were a little thinner, not quite so full.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would make beautiful brush marks, but they would fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brushes were so superiorly made and full and beautiful, but they didn't always, create that looseness. And so by making the multi-length hairs like you did, it solved that problem. So it's an excellently made brush that's going to hold together, but also create that beautiful brush mark. So that's why I have to have the Eclipse and every size.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting. One thing I do want to ask you, and you're probably the best person for me to ask, because Dan, you've got to understand, as a company we get asked a million times a day, how do you clean your brushes? What's the brush life? So I want to ask you straight up and be really honest, and I've asked everybody who I've had on these artist spotlights so far, what is your expectancy of a brush, the life expectancy? Now, I know you're terrible with your brushes.
I am. I don't care for them at all, but I don't know, because I don't know that the only time I've ever gotten rid of a brush is because some paint dried on it or something. And even then I just slowly work soap into the brush and scrape the paint off. I don't really expect them to go bad. At least I don't think I've ever thrown any clips away, and I've been using those for years. The ones that I have to replace which I also love, are those sable. They're like a real square, bright, I guess.
Is it the Series 77 or the Series 56?
No, I think it's the 77, and I love those now.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're shorter and a softer hair, and because I clean them like in my Gamsol so furiously, I will wear those down.
Right.
And so I replace those, and it's a natural hair too, I guess. That might be part of it. But the other ones, I don't know. I don't expect them to really. I mean, it's going to be a long time, years and years.
And that's. Can you just explain? And I've already pulled you up on this a million times, but how exactly? I mean, the amount of times I've walked in to you doing a demonstration, and your brushes are just in a jar, facing downwards in the terp, there's for anybody who hasn't seen this, there's 20 or 30 brushes just dying in that terps can. He pulls it out and he's like, oop, wipes it, and there he goes again. And I'm wanting to cry over here. But this is a disclaimer. Daniel Keyes does not look after things, okay, other than perhaps his dog. So at that point,
my house is not poorly looked after.
Okay, well done. But you do not look after your paintbrushes, that's for sure. And so at that point, I'd say, what is your theory with cleaning them? Because, I can be dead honest here and ask you, is it more a case of, I think, let me get this out. Okay, so I'll say it as simply as I can here. I think some people expect a brush to last forever and ever and ever in the most perfect way that they bought it. And they forget that we're actually using it as a tool. And I think if I had to sum you up as a painter, it would be a practical painter. This brush has a purpose. It serves its use. And when I finish with it, it moves along. Am I wrong there? What are your thoughts?
Yes. I mean, they're disposable.
Right.
For sure. I mean, as much as I know they're handcrafted, but it is a tool. So it's, in my mind, it's disposable. But the other thing that's probably different for me is I don't expect them to stay in the condition they were in when I first opened that package. Mm-hmm. That doesn't even make sense. I mean, think about what you're doing with this brush. You're stabbing it onto a canvas and swishing it around in solvent and all the things that you do to it. I always find it kind of funny, the way that people really baby them and cherish them, and fine. I actually want them to loosen up, to fray or to develop some kind of character over time, because, like I said, I don't like looking at paintings that look like they were painted with perfectly formed brush strokes, very uniform, and I certainly don't like painting pieces that are like that. So I want the brush to develop some kind of individual identity that I can memorize or at least recall what that brush creates, like what kind of mark it makes, and then use that to my advantage as I'm painting. Like, ooh, this kind of mark would look really good on this petal, or whatever it is. So I let them develop whatever character they can. I don't leave them sitting in the Gamsol so much anymore, I will say that.
In a year?
But I don't know the last time I washed my brushes, though. I just sort of swish them around in the Gamsol, dry them off, and let them be.
I can already tell you nothing's changed since the last time I saw you.
But I'm serious. My paintings would not look the same if I didn't let the brushes develop that way. So, to each their own. It's fine. Everyone do whatever they can. I think for people who maybe they're on a budget, they need their brushes to stay in a certain condition, but they do need to stop expecting them to stay exactly as they are when they come from the package. Even if you baby them, they're going to do different things.
I just want to say one thing. I would love for a whole week of your life for you to work on our emails. We don't have a complaints department, but if we did, you know why? I would love you to answer some of the questions we get about brush care. But in Daniel Key's fashion, where you say, actually, this is how I do it, they would be mortified. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, but it's a really, I don't know, it's just such a misguided expectation, because I've been around, like, even at the conferences or different things, when people will come up like, my brush doesn't look exactly like it did when it came, in the order. Well, of course it didn't. You've been pushing paint around with it and stabbing a canvas. It's how could it possibly look the same? It's going to change, and so I think people need to. I actually appreciate the change. That's what the difference is.
Right.
Yeah, but people need to at least expect it.
I rest my case. On that note, I would like to take a sip of my cup of tea, and I'm going to show something.
My favorite.
Can you see that?
I love it. I'm jealous I don't have one of those.
Oh, I've got two. So, I want to talk about this because, can you believe it? It was a year. Was it a year? No, 2 years. 2 years.
I'll get there.
2 years last week that I was invited to go to Pixar. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because the good man in front of me is very good friends with the organisers, the movers and the shakers within Pixar, and you managed to get me in there to go and give a brush demonstration and liaise and talk with all the illustrators and meet the different departments and have a full tour for the day. And Tia Kratu.
Isn't it fun?
Oh, just amazing. So the reason why, obviously, I mean, who wouldn't be blown away by that? It was one of my career highlights, as it were. But I want to ask you, how did you come to do that? How did that come about that you were familiar to then start teaching at Pixar?
Well, it's funny. What started to happen was I would teach so many workshops throughout the year, just my normal kind of places, and at least the ones in California that I would do, there was always someone who I'd ask them. So you get to know your workshop students, even though it's just a few days, and so inevitably, you'd ask them if they were a full time artist or what they did, and well, I work for Disney or I work for Pixar. And I was amazed at how many, I mean, some workshops, there'd be 3 or 4 people from Pixar in the workshop. They would all say hi to each other, not knowing that the other was taking this, class. And so finally, someone said, well, they'd love for you to teach there. And I said, I'd love to go there. And so they invited me. I only taught one class there, but I've been a few times, and it's so much fun. Mm-hmm. Like for you, I mean, the same thing, a highlight, because as a kid, I wanted to work for Disney. I thought I was going to draw cartoons, and so it was like a childhood dream come true.
Yeah, just such an amazing place and ethos, and I think for me, what shocked me, first of all, is that they knew who we were as a company. And I got to tell you, when I rocked up like I do with all my brushes in my suitcases, I was not expecting for people to be like, Rosemary brushes are here today, and like the onslaught. I didn't expect that. But I don't think I expected the kind of questions that they were asking, with the sincere interest to know about our company, about the tools that they're using, and then for them to want to then actively, I think what touched me as well is that they actively wanted to show me around their areas to see what they were creating, such a cool place. And I think, I'm going to say this to anybody who's never been there before, but the main building itself was designed by Steve Jobs, and the idea of it was that it was the human head. So the brain, you have the left side of the brain, which was the accounts department, if I remember. The right side was where the illustrators and the sculptors work. There was bridges over in the middle parts, and then the whole bottom was the gift shop and the cafeteria, which I thought was just such a cool idea. Right. Such a cool idea, though, that basically how they'd worked it out is you had to walk through different departments to get to wherever you wanted to go. So people had to meet and integrate, and I don't know, it was just something else.
It's fun because I think the whole world sees the products that they produce, these lovable movies, and they expect these, I don't know what we expect, like these really important, and they are, but like people who are self-aware behind the scene, and really they're just like, they're like you and me, and they love the same things that we do, and they follow so much of the fine art world. It's amazing. When I went the first time, I wasn't teaching, I was just meeting some friends there for lunch, and someone was using Alla Prima to do their work. They were referring to the Alla Prima book.
I don't know why we'd be shocked, but
for some part.
Yeah, we shouldn't be shocked, should we? But it's amazing. The crossover is amazing. I know one of my best friends, Jeremy Lipking, he often says that there's people on his workshops as well that come across and that they just admire much what our world are doing, Just so cool.
Sure.
So talking about our worlds, and I want to finish off with this, otherwise this is going to be too long for everybody. We're going to bore them to tears. I hope not. Just maybe it'll just be your mum and my mum that watch this. Who knows?
Yeah. My mom would never watch this.
No, who am I kidding? I doubt mine will either. Just joking. No, but Kathy will watch it. We know Kathy will watch it, and she'll be sat there sobbing. But I just want to talk about you and our gorgeous friend Kathy. And obviously, I've had to make the sad announcement this last week that all of my 2021 workshops are now postponed I haven't cancelled them, which is a big deal because it would have been easier probably to cancel some of them, but every instructor has said that they'll move it right back, and we're trying to match as closely those dates. I'm obviously devastated because what we thought was 2020 has now gone into another year, so it makes me beyond sad, and especially because that means that the chances are we won't travel either, so where we wouldn't have people come in, it'd be pretty ironic if then Mum and I started travelling out. We've got to think about safety for everyone here. But anyway, I wanted to say that luckily you and Kathy have both agreed to come to the 2022 slot, which is the 1st to the 5th of August 2022. And we've talked about this so much now. I mean, we've postponed it 2 years in a row. So would you like to just say a couple of words about what that week's going to be? Can you remember?
Well, it's I think Kathy is entertaining the possibility that she might be needing to be pushed around in a wheelchair by then. I don't know why, but I have gladly volunteered to push her because I'll she'll most likely become real demanding and order me around, and I'll just have total control and just sort of jolt her every time.
What if she can't see to paint by then? Oh, this is going to be a terrible workshop for anyone who's...
It'll be my career.
No, I want to be serious about this. It's going to be 5 days. There's Daniel on the inside. You're going to do indoors. And Kathy's going to be on the outside where she's safest. We're causing no damage, but it's going to be 12 students each, which I know for Daniel especially, that's a smaller number than you usually teach, which, the whole point of this is that it's going to be really inclusive, and we are building next year a whole new big barn. You don't know about this yet. This is a surprise.
Oh, wow.
And the barn will basically, it should be able to sit comfortably around 60 to 70 people. So standing, it's going to be a big old room that if it rains, you could fit 12 and 12 easy. You could probably fit 15 and 15. But the idea is that we want it to be that Daniel and Kathy will do some demonstrations together and some demonstrations apart. So they might start one morning together, and then we'll go out with Kathy. Daniel will stay in with the students. And then, who knows? Over the week, it might be that one evening, then we say, probably be like the Wednesday evening, Kathy and Daniel will come together, and they might paint different subjects, but over the same period of time so people can see that. So, I mean, I'm already excited about it last year.
It would just be so much fun. I mean, however it evolves, Kathy and I have a friendship that, gosh, I mean, it's been a long time now, and I don't know, you put this group together and it's fun, so much laughing, so much teasing, but it's all because we really, really love each other and enjoy being around each other so much. And so it's really a chance for people to kind of learn, but also I think just have a good time and enjoy being together.
You're so right, and that is honestly why I said no to 2021, because we could have probably got away with it because it's work, which in the UK you might have been okay, but we couldn't have hugged and laughed and hung out in an evening like we fingers crossed like we can in 2022. So I know it's much needed for all of us. I know I need something to look forward to. I know that the lineup for 2022 is going to be busier than ever, but I just know how much fun yours and Kathy's workshop's going to be, and I know so many students that have carried on over from the original booking of 2020 to 2021 to now. They're so patient. But if anybody's interested, get in touch, because it's definitely going to be something for me personally to look forward to, because we all need them. So I can't wait to have you here, Daniel.
I know. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time coming.
I know.
Well, listen, I'm going to wrap this up because we're close to an hour and a half. But as always, and I'm being very sincere when I say this, thank you so much for all you do for me and my mum. We still are not quite sure why you love us, but you do, so we're not going to change anything. We've won't force a change of habit, but we are so grateful for you shouting about us like you do. Without, by the way, much to Daniel's disgust, without a penny being thrown his way or a dime, whatever. But like I think for us, you'll never know. You'll never realise how grateful Mum and I are to you, and we love you. So thank you, Daniel.
Oh, I love you both very much.
We shall see you
and
soon.
Seriously, I couldn't do any of this. I mean, I was going to say this earlier. We talk about Richard, we talk about, Pixar, all of these different sects of the art world, and you are so integrated into all of it. I mean, you are, you're not just like a outsider. You are in the middle of all of it. You're such a important part.
We try. I think I cut you off there. I'm so sorry. But we do try.
No, we're grateful.
Well, stop being so kind. We're going to go now, okay? Thank you, Daniel.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Love you.
Love you.